This is a short video on grooming roses that will help you if you're planning on entering roses in a rose show. It was taken mostly in the fall of 2021 after the main roses were done. And so some of the roses aren't in the best shape. But then again, this is all about grooming roses, and I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it. Thank you. Hi, I'm Stu Dalton. I'm with the Peninsula Rose Society. I'm a consulting rosarian with the American Rose Society, a UCCE Master Gardener in the San Mateo, San Francisco district. I've been exhibiting roses for over 30 years, and I'm lucky enough to mainly exhibit in the Peninsula Rose Society shows. I won 5 of the Best in Show, Queen of Shows, and was very lucky to have been taught some of the uh, tips by one of the founders of the society, Clay Morgan and Lucia Morgan, husband-wife team. And they were pretty good about telling you what you had to do. I'm going to try and pass on some of that info. When you cut a rose for exhibition, you want to cut it long. And I cut this one a few minutes ago. I'm not really going to exhibit it. I'm just going to show how to do some things like cleaning up a hole in the leaf here. The center is too far open. It looks pretty nice, but it's not fully open, and it's not a perfect exhibition form. It does have the sort of triangle shape that you want eventually. This is a grooming kit I use for rose shows. It has some things that I keep in the carrier there for grooming, and it has, in this case, a rose that I've cut in the garden. It has my shears and a small basin of water off to the side where I have some pieces in it that have been cut off the bottom of roses that might be a ½ inch long. They were cut underwater, so I have this small thing. I have some things in here that are used to open up a tight rose. That's what those Q-tips are for. That's what the cotton balls are for. I have a handbook to selecting roses from the American Rose Society, so I know the variety proper spelling, I know the year of introduction, and I know the color and type of rose it is so that I can enter it in the proper class. I have things to make wedges with. That's what this foam is all about. You might get that in some packaging. I have a couple of scissors, one for cutting paper on the left and a good scissors to use for trimming leaves if they have damage, and I'll show that in a bit. I have other things for wedges like aluminum foil. Those can go in below the bottom of the rose and below the top lip of the vase or vial that's used to store the rose. I also have a razor blade here in a holder, and if I have to disc bud, I very carefully use that. In the back you'll see a brush, that's like a makeup brush, and a turkey baster, which is very useful for filling small tubes with water up to the brim so that they don't go dry. Sometimes I make up a bucket of water and then add a little bit of citric acid and a little bit of sugar, very much like what's in 7-Up. And if you don't have citric acid handy, you can add a little lemon juice and sugar, or stale 7-Up. Works very well to help preserve, just a little bit in the water. That helps preserve and give a little nutrition to the rose so it'll last longer. We all love stem and foliage, long stemmed roses, right? Well, judges wouldn't like this one because it's too long. And the foliage is not bad. In fact, it's very nice looking foliage, not a lot of problems on it, but there's just too much of it. So I'm going to want to cut this down nearer to the bottom. In the garden, you can cut them out with extra stem because, of course, you can't put stem back on if it's too short. It's now much more proportional to what it should be. It's still got a nice long stem, but the foliage is above the lip of the vase, and it's all around, and it's in pretty good shape. The bloom, again, is not high-pointed center. This is Elena, one of the ones I've won a Queen of Show with, so I really like this rose. But it's got some issues. Not only the confused center, but also a little bit of late-season botrytis. That's the spots, probably botrytis. And some slightly browned and degraded outer petals. So I'm going to remove some of these. With this rose, you'll see it has sort of the triangular shape of the bloom that's good, and the foliage is really good for most of it. You want to use the size as about 5:1 for the stem. So this is this long, and then I go down 5. And this could use a fairly long stem. But you notice the bottom one is damaged. I will use this one to show how to trim up the leaf. It isn't exactly a big issue, but you'd have points taken off if you left this on. The other leaves are in pretty good shape. All I'll do is clean them, which you can do very easily just with your fingers. See how this shines up with just a mild wiping? And then I'll wipe my fingers with this soft cloth to make sure they're clean afterward. You see this one sort of reflects light, where the others look a little duller. This has some damage from being carried. The leaf tear is probably from stuffing this into a larger container with other roses and then pulling it out. I'm not really going to be exhibiting these roses this time, but so you know what things to look for and how to try and keep them from getting damaged. When you carry them to the show, you want to make sure you're not ripping any of the leaves in the process. I'll next show how to take this and trim it. If you leave this just the way it is, it would detract. So I'm going to try and cut it. And I'll cut the leaf into a shape roughly equivalent to this. It will look a little distorted because it doesn't have the very fine edges with the serrations, but it will get rid of this opening. Now you can see that the leaf has been trimmed. One side has the serrations, the other side doesn't. And I could have smoothed it over a little bit, but it looks better than with the hole in it. Now to get it a little more symmetrical, you can put in the Q-tips and leave them for a few hours as you're grooming more roses. And that can actually move some of the petals out. If you've removed them from one side, you can get some expansion of those petals above it. For carrying the roses to the shows, including the monthly shows, I do have some bottles that are my own that I bought. For instance, this is a half wine bottle. It's clear, and it has a nice thin neck, which holds up the rose quite nicely. This is a hot sauce bottle. It's good for minis and very, very small roses. I like the weight on the bottom. I like the straight-sided neck, and it works pretty well. And to carry just a few roses, you can use something like this. I think I bought it at Michael's. And it's just a holder that is waterproof in case something slops, and it'll keep the bottle more or less upright. You can put a wedge in the side. This is an illustration of another type of carrier that has multiple openings, and you put bottles in it, and it actually has a handle over the top so that you can carry it. Over on the right, there's a bottle holder that has nails sticking up that actually keep the bottle from tipping over if there is an off-center rose being held. Next, I'll show you one that's been fully readied for display. This is a rose from last year that I showed in a virtual show with East Bay Rose Society. It was judged to be the first or best in the hybrid tea. If you look at the top, you see it's pointed in the center and it flattens out at the bottom. It's sort of triangular shape if you look at it from the side. That's proper for a hybrid tea in exhibition form. And you go down, you see the leaves are fairly clean. The stem is fairly clean. It's been cleaned with fingers really, and not much more. It's against a white background, so you can see it fairly clearly. The stem is also fairly long. It's about the right proportion. As you go down, you see it. There are 5 leaf sets down below, and it sort of frames the bloom. That is, it's on all sides. The foliage is on all sides. Sort of balance and proportion, and stem and foliage. They're all part of the scoring for a exhibition bloom. If you look down toward the bottom, you'll see that this is it's a fairly long stem, and it has quite a bit of nice looking foliage all the way down. And there you see the lip of the bottle, and the bottle is where you don't want to jam the foliage in. It's above the lip of the bottle, and there's a thorn sort of holding it up at the very bottom, and that's a good way to balance the rose. I hope this gives you an idea of how you actually display the rose, what it should look like at the very end. Thank you. This is a Sunset Celebration rose that was entered in the Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii regional show in 2021 in the fall. It was a floating rose, and that's a class of exhibition, and you don't have to have any stem or foliage. And so if there's a problem with that, no, you want a perfect bloom floating freely in this clear glass container. That's how these are shown. There are other things that can use just the bloom, including English box and artist's palette. Those are different means of showing individual blooms. It gives you flexibility.